The Queen's Guard in full red uniform and bearskin hat, motionless like statues carved from discipline. Crowds gathered in waves, each trying to catch the perfect photo. Children pointed. Parents whispered stories of royal tradition. Tour guides explained the history of the Guard's silence and their sacred role. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a group of teens pushed their way to the front, laughing louder than the rest. One of them, in a dark hoodie with his phone already filming, smirked as he locked eyes with a motionless soldier. "Bet I can make him blink." His friends chuckled behind him. He wasn't here for the history. He was here for a show. "Let me know when you're ready for the next part." His name was Callum, 17, restless, and wired with the kind of cocky energy that feeds on attention. He wasn't a troublemaker by record, but the kind who lived for clout. His social media was packed with prank videos, hot takes, and quick-hit reactions to anything, boring, he could disrupt. And today? The Buckingham Palace Guards were his next stunt. He stood at the front, arms folded, a sly grin stretched across his face. His phone was already recording in selfie mode, his voice loud enough for nearby tourists to hear. "Everyone acts like these guys are heroes. Let's see what happens when you poke one." His friends behind the camera egged him on. "Yo, do it! Get in his face!" Callum wasn't scared. He believed the uniform in front of him, this perfectly still man with a rifle, wasn't allowed to react. That made him the perfect target. And in his mind? This wasn't disrespect. It was just content. Callum stepped forward casually, just inches from the guard's face. The crowd around him started shifting, unsure whether to laugh or leave. A few people pulled out their phones, sensing something was about to happen. Others muttered, "Disrespectful little punk," under their breath. Callum didn't care. He waved his hand in front of the guard's eyes. Nothing. He circled around, leaned in from the side, made goofy faces, tongue out, wide eyes mocking the soldier's legendary stillness. "Come on, blink! Are you even human under there?" He laughed loudly. Tourists nearby winced. One woman whispered, "This is going too far." But Callum was just warming up. To him, it wasn't harassment. It was a test. A joke. A moment that would go viral in seconds. And the guard? Still didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. But behind that stone-cold stare, something sharp was watching. Callum wasn't satisfied with silence. The more the guard ignored him, the more he doubled down, because in his world, the only thing worse than being told off was being ignored. So he upped the stakes. He took a dramatic step forward, directly into the guard's marching path, and spread his arms wide like a street performer. "Ladies and gentlemen, the royal mannequin!" he shouted. Laughter erupted from his friends, but the rest of the crowd grew tense. A father pulled his young son back by the collar. An older tourist shook her head in disbelief. Then Callum leaned in, real close, and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. "You can't touch me. You're just a toy in a hat." And finally he did it. He placed his hand on the guard's shoulder, grinning like he'd won. But that's when the energy shifted. The guard's muscles tensed. His boots shifted slightly in the gravel. He didn't move fully, not yet. But something had changed. The laughter started to fade. The crowd quieted. And for the first time, Callum looked unsure. For a moment, the world stood still. Callum held the guard's shoulder like it was a prop, waiting for a laugh that never came. His grin wavered slightly. His eyes flicked toward the crowd, expecting cheers, but getting tight-lipped stares and uneasy silence. The guard didn't flinch. He stared straight ahead, unshaken, his jaw clenched beneath the bearskin hat. Not a blink. Not a twitch. But his silence was louder than any shout. It dared Callum to keep going. And Callum? He hesitated. Not out of fear, at least not yet, but out of confusion. He was used to getting reactions. Yells. Anger. Pushback. But this man, this guard, wasn't playing his game. A tourist in the back whispered, "He's holding back." Another muttered, That boy has no idea how close he's pushing it. Callum pulled his hand back, but he wasn't done. Not yet. He still thought he was in control. But the guard? He was just waiting. Callum, now feeling the weight of the crowd's silence, decided to push one step further, just enough to prove he still had the upper hand. He laughed, though it sounded thinner now. What? You're not even gonna blink? Say something? Do something? Then he leaned in again, voice dripping with mockery. Bet you wouldn't last 10 seconds in a real fight. And then, he faked a jab. A quick, jerky motion, his fist stopping inches from the guard's face. A move meant to intimidate. To get a flinch. To humiliate. But the guard didn't move. Didn't react. Didn't even flinch. Callum's smirk faltered. And then, click. The sound of a boot shifting. The guard, for the first time, took a full step forward. A calculated, powerful stomp that cracked like thunder on the stone beneath them. His rifle shifted upward. His chest rose. And then, in a deep, booming voice that split the tension like a blade. Stand back. Now. Callum stumbled, physically jolted by the volume. His eyes went wide. The crowd gasped. Phones lifted. Silence shattered. Suddenly, the joke wasn't funny anymore. Callum froze, his mouth slightly open, caught in that humiliating moment between ego and reality. The royal guard towered over him now, weapon angled, not threatening, but commanding. His stance was no longer ceremonial. It was active. His voice echoed again, sharper this time. Stand clear of the guard. Callum backed up fast, tripping slightly over his own foot, nearly dropping his phone. The crowd that had once giggled now roared in collective awe. Some clapped. Others laughed, not with him, but at him. One older man called out, "Respect the uniform, boy!" His friends? They kept filming, but their cheers were gone, replaced with stunned silence and wide eyes. The guard returned to his post in perfect form. One final stomp. Rifle to shoulder. Eyes forward. Unmoved. Unshaken. Unbothered. But the message was loud and clear. This is not your stage. And Callum, finally, understood he'd just been put in his place. Not with violence, but with precision, restraint, and authority. The guard resumed his exact position, feet together, back straight, rifle tight to his side. To the casual eye, it looked as though nothing had happened. But the atmosphere had shifted completely. The courtyard, moments earlier filled with shallow laughs and social media energy, now carried the quiet weight of respect. Even the pigeons seemed to avoid the space around him. Callum stepped back into the crowd, red-faced, no longer recording. His confidence had cracked. One tourist whispered, "He handled that better than most would." Another added, "He didn't just hold his ground, he owned it." People began replaying the moment on their phones. The stomp. The shout. The way the guard took control without laying a hand. Within minutes, clips started going up online, titles like, "Teen tries to bully Royal Guard, instantly regrets it." The definition of discipline. Callum looked around, realizing his face was already on a dozen screens. This wasn't just a prank gone wrong. This was a moment that now belonged to everyone else. And the Royal Guard? He just stood there, silent, motionless, resolute. As if nothing had happened. By evening, Callum's face was plastered across every social media platform. The clip, just 37 seconds long, was everywhere. YouTube Shorts, TikToks, Instagram Reels, Reddit threads. Viewed millions of times within hours. Some users added dramatic music. Others zoomed in on the stomp. The captions were merciless. "When discipline meets disrespect." He thought it was a joke, until it wasn't. "Team messes around, guard doesn't play." And the comments? They came in fast and unforgiving. "The guard showed more restraint than I would have." "Parents failed." "The guard didn't." "Disrespect in public, humiliation in 4K." Callum's own account, once full of cocky skits and prank videos, was now a war zone of angry comments, duets mocking his face, and even military veterans calling him out. At first, he tried to respond. Relax. It was just a joke. I didn't mean anything by it. But it only made things worse. Because now, it wasn't just a viral moment. It was a lesson. And he was the example. Desperate to control the narrative, Callum filmed a follow-up video in his room, still wearing the same hoodie from the day of the stunt. He spoke fast, clearly irritated. People need to chill. It was just for content. The guy didn't get hurt. He didn't even move until the end. Y'all are acting like I punched a baby seal. He smirked. Bad move. Within minutes, the backlash doubled. Duets of his apology flooded TikTok, users shaking their heads, stitching his clip with captions like, "Still doesn't get it. You disrespected a soldier, not a theme park actor. That uniform is earned, not entertainment." Then came the military community. Veterans, guardsmen, and even former instructors stitched his clip with their own responses, calm, pointed, and devastating. One retired Marine said, "You mocked a man who would take a bullet for his country while you danced for likes. That's the difference between service and self-promotion." The algorithm didn't care for his excuses. But it loved the drag. His followers dropped. Sponsors pulled out. Even his school counselor reached out, warning about the tone of his recent content. And now, even Callum could feel it. He hadn't just gone viral. He'd gone too far. Just when the internet storm seemed to be dying down, a respected British military podcast released a short segment titled, "The Man Behind the Silence: Interview with the Royal Guard from the Viral Video." The guard's identity wasn't fully revealed, just his first name, Sergeant Thomas, a 12-year veteran of the Queen's Guard and a decorated former infantryman with tours in Afghanistan and the Middle East. The interview was calm, respectful, and powerful. Thomas spoke in measured words. "My job is to stand still so others feel safe. That's not easy when someone's mocking the uniform you've buried brothers in." The host asked if he felt disrespected. He nodded. "Of course. But discipline means staying calm when you have every reason not to." He explained that the silence wasn't weakness, it was strength. And that when he finally moved and gave the command, it was because he saw the line had been crossed. The clip was only 3 minutes long. But it lit the internet on fire again, with new energy. This time, it wasn't about mocking a teenager. It was about honoring a man who had stood for something larger than himself. And once people heard Thomas speak, the story didn't belong to Callum anymore. Callum's inbox turned into a flood zone. But this time, it wasn't just trolls or kids roasting him with memes. He began receiving private messages from people he never expected. Veterans. Active duty soldiers. Guard families. Even a woman who lost her son in uniform. One message read, "My husband stood in that same spot your video showed. He was silent not because he was weak, but because he respected the country, the crown, and those who came before him." Another simply said, "You're lucky all he did was shout." But the one that hit hardest? A voice message from a retired Royal Guard. "You mocked the silence, lad. But that silence holds more history and sacrifice than you could ever fit into 100 videos." Callum stopped responding. He stopped posting. And for the first time in a long time, he sat in the quiet. 3 days later, without warning, Callum posted a new video. No intro. No background music. No jokes. Just him, sitting on his bed, hoodie off, eyes heavy. He looked directly into the camera and spoke, slower this time. "I messed up. What I did outside the palace wasn't funny. It wasn't a prank. It was disrespectful, plain and simple. I didn't understand the meaning of what those guards stand for, or what they carry in that silence." He paused. "I've read the messages. I've listened to the veterans. And the truth is, I've never been taught to respect something I didn't understand. But that's not an excuse. It's a reason to learn." His voice cracked slightly. "So this is me, saying sorry, Not just to Sergeant Thomas, but to everyone I disrespected. To the people who've worn that uniform. To the families behind them. I get it now. I really do. There were no hashtags. No sponsor tags. Just a final sentence before the screen faded to black. Silence deserves more respect than I gave it. I won't make that mistake again. And in that moment, surprisingly, people listened. The next morning, a photo began circulating online. It wasn't flashy. No logos. No news anchors. No camera crews. Just a simple image of a handwritten note posted on a community bulletin board outside a military memorial site. At the bottom, Sergeant Thomas, Queen's Guard. The note read, "Discipline isn't about staying silent. It's about choosing when to speak. That boy crossed a line, but he came back across it. That matters. I don't need an apology in public. I needed him to understand in private. Seems he does. Let's move forward." That note spread faster than Callum's original video. Veterans reposted it. Teachers printed it out. A journalist even ended their article with, "Some leaders speak without saying a word. Sergeant Thomas is one of them." The internet, once furious, now turned reflective. Comments shifted from outrage to praise, not just for the guard's restraint, but for his grace. Callum's apology stayed up. He didn't post again. He didn't have to. The guard had spoken, and in doing so, he'd done something rare online. He ended the story not with punishment, but with dignity. Weeks later, Callum returned to London, this time, without friends, without a camera, and without the swagger he once wore like armor. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. No Instagram stories. No TikToks. Just a quiet train ride and a walk across the cobbled paths of the palace courtyard. He stood at the same spot where it all happened. The same stone where he had mocked, taunted, and tried to turn a sacred moment into content. But this time, he didn't speak. He kept his hands in his pockets. He didn't smile. He didn't even raise his phone. He just watched. The guards shifted posts with perfect precision. Boots echoed. Rifles gleamed. Silence stood taller than any man in the crowd. And as one guard marched past, Callum did something simple. Something small. He stood up straight, and gave a slow, quiet salute. No one noticed. No one clapped. Except one elderly veteran leaning against a nearby gate, who gave a slight nod of approval. When a tourist beside Callum whispered, "You want a photo?" he shook his head. "No," he said softly. "Some things aren't meant to be captured. Just respected." He turned and walked away. Not famous. Not shamed. Just changed. And that was the real moment that went viral.